Hey y'all, welcome back to our very bookish channel. My name's Amanda, and Jen and I run this channel together because we are best friends that just love to talk about books. So if you are here for bookish content, you have come to the right place. Please click that subscribe button. I would love to have you all, if you're not subscribed already, subscribe and be part of our community. So welcome to our quarterly wrap up where we discuss all of the books that we read this last quarter but we have not talked about in vlogs.
Hey guys, and welcome to our quarterly overview of books we don't read in vlogs or ARC reviews. We've been wanting to find a way to recap what we are reading that are not in vlogs. We had been doing them monthly, but we felt like we were getting to them late. There were other vlogs to do. It just felt like too much on our plate. And I think we tried once where we were doing it after 2 months, I think, if I remember correctly. And I think we kind of fell off of that for a while. And then this year we had bandied about ideas and we thought maybe a quarterly overview where we would do it 4 times this year and just go over 3 months of books that we don't have in any of the vlogs. So far this year, my goal to read, though I try not to put too much emphasis on the number because I just want to enjoy reading. I had put myself at 75 books on Goodreads. That was my goal last year. I had a particularly good year last year, mostly because I found a way to listen to audio that was both enjoyable and I could actually pay attention to them, which is typically when I'm driving. And it helped me get to, I think it was like 110-ish books. It was around there. And that's crazy to me because I don't know if I've ever read that many books in a year. I have definitely read more since we have been doing this channel, though my first year, the year before last, because we're going to be going on 2 years of doing Fiction Addictions, I had only done 50 books that year. There were a couple months where I just couldn't get to that many books, and it definitely brought my number of books down. For this year, for January, February, and March, I have 27 books total read. That's including the ones in vlogs. And there were 2 more that I DNF'd at about 15-ish percentage. And I know some people count those. I've seen some vloggers and some people on TikTok talking how they feel that just because they didn't want to finish it, the time they put into what they did read, they wanted to count it. The 2 that I DNF'd, one, I had only listened to, I feel like that one was more 10% because it was an audiobook and I just wasn't liking how it was being read. And that was The Rule of 3 by Sam Ripley. And the other one that I DNF'd, which was The Turned Glass by Gareth Rubin, I did probably read a bigger portion of that one. So if I were to include those 2, even though I didn't finish them, it would be 29 books. I don't think I'm going to get another one. I'm recording this on Friday. Monday is the last day of March, and I don't anticipate getting through a full book, but who knows? It may end up that I have an even 30, which is about 10 books a month, and that definitely is going to put me really close to last year's number. But I don't want to stress myself out. For all I know, I mean, I'm not going to get to that many for whatever reason. This week I'm in right now, I know I'm only back to work this is the 2nd week back after having surgery. I've been exhausted. When I come home at night, I can barely read anything when I get home. And it already feels like it's slowing me down somewhat. So there could be things that end up slowing me down and I don't want to have to worry about the number. That's where I am. If you want to talk about number of books. Of those almost 30, I have 2 5-star reads, which I think is pretty good. I think that's a pretty good amount, because 5 stars shouldn't be that many books. Well, unless you're that lucky. I feel like I give out 4 stars way more. I definitely have more 4-star books, and I have 3-star books, but I didn't rate the DNF books, which probably would have been 1s or 2s, but I just didn't feel that it's fair to the book or the author, if I wasn't in the mood to read it, that I punish them. Because sometimes I feel like it is definitely my mood. I didn't feel like they were poorly written. I just it wasn't grabbing my attention. Let's start going over the books and I'm gonna go basically chronological order of when I read them. And the first one back in January is Two Twisted Crowns. I swear I owned a physical copy of it, but I can't find it. And I wasn't gonna spend too much time trying to find a physical copy when I can just put it on the screen. So it is the follow-up to One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. I loved this series. One Dark Window for me was a definite 5-star book, but I had read that last year. And I ended up giving 4 stars to Two Twisted Crowns. I felt like it wasn't as powerful and hitting me as One Dark Window, but it definitely is a really great book. I loved it so much. It's about Elsbeth, and it's about these cards that she's trying to collect, and there's something called the Nightmare that ends up being with her because of these like prophecy cards. And there is also a love interest. I just love how Rachel Gillig wrote this world. I felt like she did such a great job, and I can't wait to read her next one. It comes out, I want to say it's in April or May. I could be wrong about that. I can put it on the screen. The Night and Something, and I'm forgetting it at this minute. Amanda just read it and loved it. I have it as an Edelweiss ARC, which is electronic advanced reading copy. I just haven't gotten to it yet because I'm trying to keep up with all of the vlogs that we're doing and all the books that I want to read, but I think it's The Night and the Moth, but I will put it on the screen. I know there's a huge fan base out there for Rachel Gillig, and especially the One Dark Window and Two Twisted Crowns, so I have a feeling that everyone knows what I'm talking about if you have read her. But I definitely started off the year strong with that sequel to One Dark Window.
So the first books that I want to talk about are 2 books that I read. They're the first 2 books of a trilogy, so I'm just talking about them together. And they are by an author that I love, and that is Nevernight and Godsgrave of the Nevernight Chronicles by J. Kristoff. So it's no secret that I love the Empire of the Vampire trilogy, and I'm anxiously awaiting the 3rd and final book of that trilogy to come out in November. But until then, I had decided to read the Nevernight Chronicles, and I have read the first 2 books. And I love this world. I love this assassin. J. Kristoff's writing is just so unique but lyrical and pretty. Like, his prose is just amazing. The stories that he tells are amazing. His characters are just badass. Like, his characters are just so fun and such good characters. I just really enjoy all his writing. Nevernight was a 5-star read for me. I really liked the first book. I really liked the setup. I really liked all the emotions that were evoked. I really liked all of the trials that these characters went through. Godsgrave was just 4 stars for me. I didn't feel as connected to the characters in this book. I didn't feel as invested in the outcomes. I really enjoyed the story that was told in Godsgrave. I think it was a fantastic story that was told. I think that the world that was built and expanded on in this book got better, so I enjoyed that aspect. I just really wasn't into the romance section of this book, and these are not romantices or romance focused books, but there is a romance subplot, and I wasn't trusting it. It felt unbelievable to me, and I had a hard time liking the character that she was romantically involved in, so that kind of dragged the book a little bit for me down to a 4 stars, but still amazing. I can't wait to finish off the trilogy, and I probably will do a short where I'm discussing all the series I'm in the middle of when I finish the 3rd and final book.
The next book was a fantasy book and by E.B. Asher called This Will Be Fun. I had been wanting to read this for a while, and it's about this group that end up coming back together after years prior they had come together to slay a dragon, like a bunch of superheroes, and they end up coming back together years later. And it was a really fun book. I ended up giving it 4 stars. I felt like it was at a time that I was trying to balance a dark book with a light book. I definitely, for fantasy readers, this would be one that would, I feel, be so much fun. It was really enjoyable for me. And I would say one of the bad things about doing this is I was trying to go back through my Goodreads and not just seeing what I started, but making sure I was trying to remember what the books were, because at this point it was over 2 months ago that I finished that book. And I don't feel like I have a good memory as it is. So I'm going to do my best as we keep going to try and remember. Obviously, I don't want to re-describe the plot to you guys and just give you how I felt about it at the time, things I loved about it or did not love about it, and not worry so much about all the details of each book.
I read a short story by an author that I've heard so much about and so many people rave about, and that is The Answer Is No by Fred McBachman. And I have heard so much about the Beartown series. It's a thriller. I've never been really interested in it though. Beartown just doesn't seem like a thriller that would really suck me in, that is like very fast-paced and grippy, like a Frida McFadden thriller. So I haven't really read any of the books, even though it is a thriller and people rave about it. But I saw this short story and I thought I would read it because it's a short story and it might give me an idea of this author's writing. So I read this short story and I can see the appeal of this author. He writes very emotional stories. He pulls on those heartstrings, but I really didn't enjoy it. And I think the short story, although it was emotional, it really didn't impact me. It really didn't hit, it really didn't grab me the way I like it to. And again, it is a short story and I'm not usually a big fan of short stories to begin with, so it could have been that. But again, I didn't enjoy it so much and I'm really not planning on reading Beartown anytime in the near future.
The next one was Perfect Marriage by Geneva Rose. I have been wanting to read this one for a while because it's been out for a few years. And it's one in the Facebook groups where I joined, both thriller and just even general book groups that talk about her. She has a huge fan base online. And when I finally read this, I was a little shocked because I don't know what I thought it was about. I liked it more than I thought I was going to like it, because I did see it was one of those books where you see a lot of like bad reviews of it and people that did not enjoy it and thought it was, not the greatest thing. And then I saw a bunch of people who liked it. So this one had a very, I feel like, divided viewpoint. I ended up really enjoying it and I gave it 4 stars. I really want to read her follow-up, which comes out, I believe, in April, and I plan to try and get to it and do an ARC review. The sequel is called The Perfect Divorce. I was surprised by the ending, but this marriage, The Perfect Marriage, and I'm forgetting the names. So Sarah Morgan is the wife and her husband is Adam. She's a lawyer. She ends up defending Adam because his mistress ends up murdered and she defends him. And that seems like a crazy scenario. And I really enjoyed it. I felt like it had a couple plot twists that I didn't necessarily see coming. I didn't feel like it was predictable, at least for me. And I am so curious how they're going to take this story and go into the next one. And I can't say because it'll ruin it, but that's one of the reasons why I really want to get to it, because I am just very curious how that book is going to go. But I did enjoy this one.
The next book I'm going to talk about was an ebook I read, so I'm going to put a picture up here, and that's A Fire in the Sky by Sophie Jordan. I wanted to read this book. I read it early in January as part of like my dragon themed January month, This is a series. There is another book coming out. For me, this was a 3-star read. I felt like it was fun and entertaining, but it really didn't stick with me. I'm having a hard time recalling all the details of the book. I know that it follows a young woman who is forced into this marriage, and the guy that she's forced into the marriage to was kind of tricked by the current king into this marriage. So it's sort of forced proximity that grows into more as far as romance goes. Obviously there are dragons in this book, but I can't talk about them because I don't want to spoil anything, and I'm trying to keep my wrap up short since I have many books to go over. So just know it was fun, it was interesting. I think if you want just a light read where you can just read and get immersed in the story, it's great. But it was a 3-star for me because it's not a story that really has stuck with me, that has blown my mind or stood out in any remarkable way.
The next one, I have been wanting to read Octavia Butler for a while, and I'll put the picture on the screen. I had listened to the audio of this, and it's called Parable of the Sower. I definitely enjoyed her writing. And I think what was happening with this book for me, and I ended up giving 4 stars because mostly why I gave 4 stars, because of her writing was a big part of it, but also the subject just felt very needed at this time. And it's about, this book was written in the 1990s, 1992, I want to say. And the premise for this book just feels like she predicted current day and the landscape of some of what's going on, especially in our country. And I feel like that's impactful. It's been getting a lot of people talking about online because it seemed like it was a prediction coming true. Because the book, it takes place in 2024. So she wrote it in early 90s. She has it take place in 2024, and America is pretty much like devastated. There's water shortages. The protagonist, I believe her name was Laura. She is in a part of LA that is relatively safe, but her father tries to teach her. He's a preacher. I wasn't trying to rhyme there. He tries to teach her to keep her safe and to not get involved with too much. But a lot of things end up happening, and she ends up having to go north. And it just tells a tale of destruction and what decisions in America have led to that. And it definitely isn't, current days definitely isn't at the place that she predicted, but a lot of people feel like that's where we're headed. And I feel like it was a very powerful book, and it makes you think. It is considered science fiction. I think a lot of the reason why is because not only at the time was it taking place in the future, but she does talk about things that are happening in the environment and everything that's contributing to that. So I picked it up because people were talking about it so much, and it was on Goodreads and people giving it reviews. But I've always heard of Octavia Butler, and she was one of the authors I always felt like I needed to get to. And I was very happy at finally being able to get to it. Even if it was more of a depressing book, I still feel like it's a very important book. So if any of those things interest you, I would definitely say pick up Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler.
The next book I read was a dragon book as part of my Dragon January, and that was Fear the Flames by Olivia Rose Darling. And this book I also felt was okay. It was another 3-star for me. I am continuing the series when the next book comes out. I do have it on a watch list where I keep checking to see if they're going to release arcs of the next book, or to see when the book is going to be published so I can include it in my most anticipated. But again, I felt like it was just okay. In this book, you're following a young woman who has been imprisoned and has had her dragons taken from her, and her dragons have been imprisoned, and the whole point of this book is her finding a way to get to her freedom and free her dragons. And of course, there's a lot more details than that. There is romance in this book. There is a lot of plot to uncover as far as the world and the politics and the king and all of the reasons why she was imprisoned and her dragons were kept imprisoned. So I will leave the reading to you to figure all of that out. But it was an okay book. I am going to, like I said, I'm going to continue the series. But again, it didn't just blow my mind or really leave any remarkable lasting impressions.
The next one I struggled with a little bit because I kept putting it down needing to do vlogs and such. And it was called A Killing Cold by Kate Alice Marshall. I've been wanting to read Kate Alice Marshall for a while because she writes thrillers and I really wanted to have a chance to read one of her thrillers. It was a physical arc, but me having to keep putting it down, I ended up not finishing it until after the book was out for a little bit. I ended up not doing an arc review, but I did enjoy it a lot. I liked how she wrote it. It was your typical short chapters, fast paced, and it felt really frustrating that I couldn't get through that book at the time, and I ended up finishing it, but I did give it 4 stars. This one is about a couple who they're headed to his family's cabin, and it's like a snow cabin. I can't remember what state it's supposed to be taking place in. And when she's there, she's having these intense, like, this seems so familiar. I don't know why this is seeming so familiar. And it's almost like an unreliable narrator though, because she's not giving you the full story about what her background is. You get some of it, but you almost feel like she's not telling you everything, or you're not getting told everything about her background. And then when she's up there, she ends up seeing in one of the cabins, because they have like, it's a whole area that their family own, like all these individual cabins. His family is rich, and that's part of the plot actually, is how his family is rich and has influence. He ends up seeing a picture of what she thinks is herself young, and she thinks, oh my God, I think I've been here. She doesn't know what the full story is, and she tries to get clues and she's trying to do things, but she gets scared because some of his family seems ominous, as if they either recognize her or she may have been lured there under false pretenses. I'm not going to obviously give it away, but that's the premise. That's how they sell the story to you. Is this a trap, or is this something where she used to be and just happens to be there now? It was very interesting, and I thought the ending was very satisfying. So I did give it 4 stars. I did enjoy it a lot. I definitely feel if you like thrillers, you would enjoy it.
The next book I want to talk about is another mediocre fantasy book that I read, and that is The Wren in the Holly Library by K.A. Lindy. And this is a Beauty and the Beast reimagining, and it is urban fantasy, which shocked me. Until I started reading this book, did not know this was urban fantasy. Granted, I don't do a lot of research into my books before I read them. I kind of just feel the vibes and pick it up and read it and see what happens. But the cover does not scream urban fantasy, and the description does not scream urban fantasy. So I was really shocked when I discovered it was urban fantasy. The only thing I can say is the inside cover art shows a city, so this does look kind of urban fantasy. But the book is gorgeous, by the way. But I didn't know it was urban fantasy, and urban fantasy is not a genre I tend to gravitate towards. I haven't really loved any urban fantasy books that I have read, so it just seems, I don't know, maybe that's just not a good genre for me. I just enjoy epic or grimdark fantasy or romantasy much more than the urban fantasy subgenre. So take this review with a grain of salt. If you're someone that loves urban fantasy, you'll probably love this book. But I found that I do want to continue the series, I think, when the next book comes out. I think it's the Oak and the Holly Library, or the Oak and the Holly something, that's coming out next. When the next book in this is going to be released, I will have it listed in our most anticipated, because I am planning on reading the next book. But again, it just was kind of mediocre for me. It really didn't keep me interested the whole way through. I kind of felt like I was zoning out and maybe thinking about reading different books while I was reading this one. So it didn't really captivate me, but I liked it enough. I liked it just enough to try to continue the next book. So we'll see. Maybe the next book will be better, or maybe the next book will be in DNF and I will quit the series. I don't know. We will just have to wait and find out.
The next one I was really interested in reading. It's called Cross My Heart by Megan Collins. And it's about a woman who ends up getting a heart transplant, and she finds out through like a donor connection that she has the heart of a prominent doctor. His wife had died, and she somehow figures out that she got the heart from his wife when his wife had died. And she almost becomes obsessed with him, and she wants to get to know him, and she's drawn to him. I didn't know what I expected with this novel, but I felt it was kind of original. I hadn't read anything like it, and definitely very fast paced, and I couldn't wait to get to the end. I really enjoyed it. It was another 4-star book for me. So if you enjoy thrillers, I definitely think this one would be good for you too.
The next book is a book that I did actually really enjoy, and that is Rebel Witch. And this is the second book of the Crimson Moth duology. The first book I felt like was okay, but I did continue. And the second book, you guys, this book, Rebel Witch, was so much better than the first book. I thought the book was very clever. I liked the arguing and quips between the characters. I do feel like they could have dropped the arguing and come together sooner in the book, but overall the ending was fantastic. It kept me interested. I just kept wanting to eat this book up and read and read and read and read and read. I couldn't wait to get to the end and find out what was going on and what was happening, and I just really enjoyed my time reading this book. I think it was much better than the first book. So if you are someone that read the first book and you're questioning if you should continue the series, I think you should. I think you should give the second book a try, because it just gets better.
Another one that I feel was a more serious tone. It's fiction, and I didn't know what to expect, and it ended up being kind of so serious and depressing, I would say, even though it was written well. It's called I Who Have Never Known Man by Jacqueline Harpoman. I believe it was made to be somewhere in the future, and it's just very depressing in terms of the state of women in this book. As much as the message might be what to do with oppression, especially as a woman, and how you have to fight for freedoms and fight to be heard and seen, I appreciate all of those, but I feel like when I read it, it just really ended up hitting me as like it was depressing for me. I do feel it was written really well, and I think we go back to being mood readers. It's just, it can be hard sometimes. And as much as I enjoyed it, I feel like I would have to warn anyone who would want to read it that it feels like the message is just so depressing. At least it hit me depressing. I don't know. It feels like something that I would have probably enjoyed when I was going to college and discussing it with my friends at college, but reading it and not talking to anyone about it and like absorbing the story was rough for me. I think that's how I want to explain it better instead of just it was depressing. There's some books, I don't know what kind of readers you guys are, but I feel more and more, I love when I get a chance to talk books out with people, even if sometimes it's texting. There's something about it's another step of enjoying it. And something that I've noticed, I just recently finished Sunrise on the Reaping, which is the new Hunger Games novel. In the Hunger Games world, it's technically a prequel. Amanda and I are reading at the same time, but she had just started it. It's a very emotional novel, in my opinion, because of what the world of the Hunger Games is. But something that connects me so much more to it is seeing people talk about it online. There's a lot of conversation going on, like TikTok and Facebook and Instagram, and mostly TikTok though. And you see a lot of videos, and I feel like it really helps connect to the book. And I think part of my enjoyment for some books is when you get a chance to talk about it with people. And this one, I didn't talk about it with anybody, so I feel like that's why it was depressing. But moving on.
Unfortunately, this next book is a DNF. And the premise of this book sounded interesting. It sounded like something I'd like. It sounded like something really dark and disturbing. And that is The Library at Hellebore by Cassandra Caw. And this was an ARC that I received. I am not sure when the book comes out, if it's out yet or not, but I thought this book sounded interesting. I wanted to read it and give it a try. I did read maybe the first 10%, and I don't think it's a long book. So I read the first 10% or so, and what really took me out of this book was the writing. The writing doesn't really flow. The author puts in a lot of words that you're not used to reading, a lot of different words. And at first I thought, oh, this is fun. What's this mean? And then I would look it up and be like, okay, cool, I learned a new word. But then when it's like every single page, you're kind of like, okay, what exactly does that word mean? And you're trying to look up all these words. The writing felt kind of pretentious. It felt kind of like made me feel stupid. I think as, readers, we probably tend to do have a larger vocabulary than non-readers, just because we're constantly seeing words and learning words and new ones. And I like that. I don't mind being challenged learning new words, but I don't like stopping my reading to have to look up words every single page and try to remember what they all mean. So I don't know. I didn't enjoy the writing. I didn't enjoy the writing of this book, and I had to DNF it.
So a romance, I kind of talked about this in a vlog where our significant others chose a book for us. It was our secret read in February. He didn't end up choosing this one, and it was one of his choices. He ended up choosing for me Flicker in the Dark. But in February, I ended up reading it because I really wanted a romance at that time. I feel I was reading a lot of dark books, like I just talked about. I needed something that was more romance. Now, I've read Ashley Poston. I read 7 Years Slip, which was very enjoyable. This one was good. I mean, the premise was really interesting. There's a woman driving to meet her friends to talk about books. It's funny. Didn't mean to actually make that connection, but she is in a book club with her friends, and they were going on like a book club retreat, and all her friends cancel on her. Her car breaks down, and she ends up in this town that is an exact replica of the town in her favorite romance series. So I thought for sure it was going to end up she was in a coma, and imagined this whole entire thing up. And I'm not going to say if I'm right or not about that, because it's ruining it if you want to read this. But I had so much expectation for this book, and I feel it just didn't get there for me, and ended up only being 3 stars. But it was still a lighter book. 3 stars is still a good rating in my opinion. It's a solid book. It just didn't take it to like a Sophie Cousins level for me. So I did enjoy it. It had a really interesting premise. So anyone who reads romance, I think you would probably enjoy this book.
The next book is one of those books that has been extremely popular. I bought it a while ago, and I haven't read it yet. And I just thought now's the time. Just pick it up and read it and see if you like it so you can finish the trilogy. And that is The Prison Healer by Lynette Naoni. And I enjoyed this book. I really did enjoy this book. I felt like the twist at the ending was big. I have to say, it wasn't completely surprising, but the way that it was written and the impact that it had was really big. I enjoyed that. I am going to move on to the next book in the series. In fact, I actually found a copy of the next book at Half Price Books, so I bought it and am probably going to continue the next book in this series soon.
One of my favorite authors is Jodi Picoult. I've read her forever. There's so many books by her that I absolutely love. Probably my favorite of all of hers is called Second Glance. It was the first one I ever read by her, and it was a automatic 5-star book for me, and she hooked me for life. I'll always try reading her books. There were some, I actually DNF'd a couple of her books just because the subject material just wasn't hitting me, and she tends to do controversial subjects. The one I read in this quarter was The Color War, and it was, I would say, more of a novella. It wasn't that long. She puts out a lot of exclusive novella types that for this one, I think it was exclusive with Amazon, potentially just Audible. I can't remember. It might be only audio. I did listen to it as an audio. It didn't hit the mark for me. It was short enough that I didn't have to worry about DNFing. And it always makes me sad when one of her books don't go the way I feel like her books usually go for me. And I don't know why that is. It's just sometimes the subjects aren't hitting me. And it's about a summer camp over one summer. And it's like about teenagers, and the viewpoint, and I can't remember the character's name, was just trying to fit in at this camp and ends up connecting with his camp counselor. But I don't know. It didn't hit it for me. I still gave it 3 stars. I think sometimes I do it just because it's Jodi and I love her writing. I just feel like she writes so well. But I don't know. It was missing something. I felt like I wanted a lot more. And I do tend to say that when it's a novella or something short. That could just be my issue, is I want more. And that could be an indication that it is good if you want more and you didn't want it to stop. It didn't hit like Jodi's books normally do for me, unfortunately.
This book is a book I got as an ARC and I put off reading, and I picked it up because it has been released and a lot of people have been buzzing about it, and that is The Rose Bargain by Sasha Payton Smith. This book I felt was different. I felt it was interesting. I don't think that I loved this book as much as some of the other people that have been raving about it. I've heard this book described as this book meets this book meets this book, and I have to say that none of those descriptions in my mind really match this book. It is a good book. I do think that it's worth reading if you like romantasy. I just think it's a little bit overhyped.
Next one is by an author that I have grown to love. I read several of her books now, and her name is Serafina Nova Glass, and the book is Nothing Ever Happens Here. And I did listen to this on audio. It was when I was recovering, and I feel like it did really well on audio. It didn't hit as much. This book wasn't as engaging as I had with her previous. And I don't know, this is the first time I listened to her book on audio. And sometimes I wonder if the audio is the reason why a book hits a certain way versus reading it. I don't know if you guys feel that way. I've been thinking a lot about audio versus reading it. And this one is pretty much like a murder mystery, because a woman's husband ends up going missing, and it's the same night because you see it from 3 viewpoints. And I should have written down the characters' names, but I, of course, did not. The one viewpoint you see from is someone who basically gets robbed, I guess, or she walks in on a situation, just maybe wrong time, wrong place, that he is robbing something. And she lived to tell the tale, though, because it happens at the beginning of the book. And she actually thinks, because the guy he's disguised in like a ski mask and you can't tell who it is, but she thinks it was the missing husband. It wasn't her husband, but the other character's viewpoint that you see. You end up finding out everything. I feel like there were some satisfying conclusions to the mystery, but the person that she walked in on, he gets away, and she thinks she was able to escape and nothing will happen. And then a period of time passes and she gets a note that threatens her, basically. And she is pretty sure it's from that guy. So she's trying to figure out what's going on and self-investigating it because she's scared for her life and her family. Mostly why you're seeing the 3 viewpoints is what exactly happened. And one of the viewpoints didn't make sense in that novel until the end. Sometimes I like that, sometimes I don't. I feel like it was being frustrating in this book because you kept reading what you felt like wasn't tied to anything at all. And it wasn't in a good way either. It wasn't like, oh, this is interesting information. It felt like innocuous information. Like, why am I reading this? And I ended up giving it a 3. It may have deserved a lower score, to be honest. I just really like her writing. And I feel like I say that a lot for books that I'm reading, but I am drawn to a certain storytelling style. And that's why I stick with some of the authors that I do. So yeah, it was kind of ho-hum for me.
The next book that I need to talk about is The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. This is a prequel in the Hunger Games trilogy. I read this book because Jen and I wanted to vlog Sunrise on the Reaping, and I wanted to read this book before I read read Sunrise on the Reaping. I was disappointed in this book. I actually kind of wish I hadn't read this book and probably just watched the movie. I did not like any of the characters, even Lucy Gray. I just did not like her. In the back of my mind, I kept thinking she's doing this for her own selfish preservation. She doesn't really feel the same about Cornelius. She's just playing him. Like, I don't know. There's something about even Lucy Gray, even about her character, I just didn't quite believe. And obviously Cornelius Snow, President Snow, I know he's a bad character in the end. It was sort of interesting to see where he'd come from, but unlike Haymitch, he did not come from very good beginnings. He's just always been, I think, a despicable person, and this book showed that, and I didn't like that. I didn't like that at all. I just was disappointed in this book, and I really wish that I had just watched the movie. I haven't seen the movie yet, but based on the advertisements I've seen of the movie might actually be better than the book in this situation. Don't come at me for saying that, but that's just how I feel right now. I was just very disappointed in this book.
The next one is The Villa by Rachel Hawkins, and I've been wanting to read this for a while. I had read a Rachel Hawkins book last year. I think it was last year. It could have been 2 years at this point. But I really enjoyed it. I think it was last March because it was for a secret read and we were picking a book that was green and it was called The Heiress. This one had a really interesting premise. It was about two friends who go to Italy. They're in this villa and they find out a murder had happened in the 70s. And it was with a prominent celebrity at the time. Both of these friends are writers and they end up having this like competitive thing between them because they go there to also like write. At the same time, it's like dual stories, dual timeline, because you're also seeing things from the 1970s and that celebrity and what really happened that summer when the murder happened. I feel like it was very disjointed. I don't feel a lot of what ended up happening at the end made sense. A lot of the information that you end up finding out, because one of the friends was going through a divorce and had been really depressed, and the other friend was like this more successful writer in terms of sales, extroverted friend, I guess you would say, and she kind of like drags her to Italy to like cheer her up. And they ended up being like more competitive there. And I don't know, it didn't really end up, I don't feel like it ended on a good note. And I didn't like where it ended up going. So I wasn't a fan of this one, which was disappointing. And I believe I gave this one a 3 stars.
Another book that I'm excited to talk about is Darkly by Marisha Pessl. I love this author. I read the Night Film by her, absolutely loved it. The Night Film is an adult book. This is a young adult book, and it was giving me the Inheritance Games vibes. It's like a more mature, higher stakes Inheritance Games. Okay, I just ate this book up. I thought it was really fun, very creative. It is mixed media in some parts of the books, just like the Night Film, which I enjoy. I do enjoy the mixed media books. And I just highly recommend this if you like mysteries. It's young adult, so it was very fast, easy to read. Nice characters. The main character I absolutely loved, and I think this is a good book if you're looking for maybe something like the Inheritance Games. If you enjoy the Inheritance Games and you're looking for something else that's similar, this would probably be a good book for you.
After reading The Color War, by Jodi Picoult, I wanted to read another Jodi book because I hate when I read something that I don't necessarily like by her, and there's still several I haven't read by her. So I picked back up The Book of Two Ways. When I originally started to read it, it came out in 2020, or no, I'm sorry. I think it came out in 2019, and then tried to read it in 2020 during the pandemic. And I just couldn't read it because it felt too, I don't know. At the time, I was going through all my health stuff at the time, and it felt depressing. One of the reasons why it felt, you'll know what I mean in a minute. So the character in The Book of Two Ways is a death doula. And what a death doula is someone who helps people at the end of their life when they're in hospice and they know they're going to pass away. She helps make their life easier. She gets things that will help ease all the pain of leaving this world. Since I was going through chemo and battling cancer at the time, I did not want to read. I was not feeling inspired by so much death talk. So I had to put it down at the time. I had almost forgotten about that. I couldn't really remember what it was about when I picked it back up. And then when I picked it back up, I was like, oh, that's right. So I don't feel like I picked two good Jodi books in my first quarter of this year. It still kept my interest. I did finish it because I was determined this time not to put it down again. And there's a lot. She really researches her books, and there is a lot of research on Egyptian way of life and Egyptian mythology. So the premise of this story is the death doula. She goes to take an airplane ride, and I forget where she's going, but the plane has an emergency. It doesn't necessarily crash, but it has to make an emergency landing. And when it makes the emergency landing, I think something technical was wrong with the plane. It crashes enough, or when it lands, it's not your typical airplane landing. And some people do die from it. And she almost died, obviously. She didn't end up having any injuries or anything, but it was this moment where she saw her life where, what is the thing you think of when you're about to die? Like, what flashes to your brain? Is there something that you wish you had done? And what comes to her is when she was in college, she had gone to do research in Egyptian mythology. I think she originally was planning on doing something else with her life. She knew a man that she was really in love with at that time, but she ended up leaving him because something happened with her father. And her father, I think, ended up passing away, and she ended up meeting her husband, who she spent her life up until this accident with. So she feels like she needs to see what that life was, or what she was missing, before she can move past what happened to her with this airplane accident. So it was okay. I only gave it 3 stars. I don't know. It just wasn't hitting me again with her. I feel like I need to pick up another Jodi book, and I'm hoping she comes out with a new one this year. It's what I'm really hoping, is that she announces she's going to have one come out later this year. But yeah, that was the Book of Two Ways.
The next book was an audiobook that I listened to, and that is A Lady of Darkness by Melissa K. Roick, I think is how you say her name. And this is one of those books that I have seen all over YouTube, and I was very curious. It seemed like something that would really hold my attention and be something I would enjoy, and I did enjoy it. I ended up giving it 4 stars, so it was better than average, but not quite 5 stars. It did give me a Throne of Glass vibes. Now, in that series, I have only read Assassin's Blade and A Throne of Glass, but the main character in Lady of Darkness is very similar to the main character in A Throne of Glass, except it gets pulled into this fae world, and I'm not sure how much of that shows up in the Throne of Glass series overall, because like I said, I've only read the first 2 books, the prequel and the first book, but I was just getting those same vibes, those same feelings, and it was pretty good. It was interesting. I moved on and have now read the 2nd and 3rd book, which I will talk about in our next quarterly wrap-up. I'll probably have the series finished by the time we get to our next quarterly wrap-up, because I really keep thinking about this world and these characters, and I want to get the series finished. So I hope that might entice you to try to find this book and read it, because if you like romantasy, fantasy, if you like Sarah J. Maas, I think this is another book that gives you those same vibes that you will enjoy.
The next one is called An Evil Premise. It doesn't even come out until August, because I have the electronic arc of it, and it's by T. Marie Vandelli. I became obsessed with her book theme music when we did a vlog last year for a secret read where we were judging a book by its cover. As soon as I saw she has a new one coming out and I was able to get the electronic arc, I was intent on reading it because I loved theme music so much. And Amanda and I were talking about this recently. I am not a fan of like graphic violence in books. For the longest time, I didn't even read horror because I thought they were all graphically violent. And theme music had some of that. I wouldn't say a lot. And the parts that it did have that, I think I said it in that vlog, which Amanda can tag, I was able to get through. It wasn't too bad. I feel like there was a lot, and I would call it body horror. I feel like there's a lot more in this one, and it was rougher for me to get through. I still haven't decided if I want to do an ARC review for it yet, because it's not out for a while, and I feel like it might be too early to do one because I read it so early. I did end up giving it 4 stars because it is just a wild book, but it is dark. It is a dark book. And I know there are people that like it, and I am drawn to the dark as well, but some of that body horror, it's just, it's hard for me to read some of that stuff. So what the book is about is there's 2 sisters, and one ends up in a coma, and the other sister comes to see her and see what's going on, and she ends up going to her apartment that's in this like house, and it's the house they originally grew up in too. So she goes to her sister's apartment, and she sees that her sister was working on this book. Her sister is a really well-known author. Again, she also, the point of view you're getting from, and I wish I would remember names. I should have done more. I should have written these things down. I wasn't thinking so much for when I was about to record. I guess I just thought my mind would magically remember all this information. So she sees her sister had was in the middle of writing this book. As she starts reading it, she is kind of taken aback because the story seems to be what is happening. It's about a woman who ends up in a coma, and a sister comes to the apartment and starts reading this novel and feels this strange pull to it. She feels like there's something for her in this book that her sister was writing. The publisher ends up getting a hold of her. She somehow talks to the publisher. I think they're calling her sister's phone, but she answers it. And they end up having a conversation asking her to finish this book because there's a deadline, and obviously the sister's in a coma. I don't know how much more I want to say because it's a very strange book. It ends up down a rabbit hole of just horror and weird and surprising. It's just a very interesting book. I feel like the ending even takes it up a notch. I mean, I was so close to giving this book a 5 stars, but I feel like what was preventing me was some of the body horror, and I don't know. Something just made me think it was almost there. I really enjoyed it. I loved it. If you like dark things and any of that premise sounded interesting, you'll definitely read it. It comes out in August.
The final book in this quarterly wrap up that I read and didn't talk about is The Orphanage by the Lake by Daniel Miller. This book, I don't know how to describe this book. I read this book so fast. This is a book I read not in one day, but in over a 24-hour period. So I started it one night and finished it the next day. It's a very fast-paced thriller. It's very fun to read. It is dark. It digs into this dark world. You're following this young woman who is trying to solve a mystery around what is happening to these kids that are disappearing. And I just really enjoyed this book. I just wanted to read it obsessively, and I do have the arc of the next book. It is a series, so I do have an arc of the next book coming out in the series, and I do plan on reading that one in the near future. So I might do an arc review on that one if I get it read before the book comes out, which is very likely.
All right, I'm down to the last book. I feel like I have been talking forever. I don't know if I realized I read that much outside of the vlogs. I, for some reason, thought it was less than what it actually is. So the last book, I'm ending on a good note. It's The Wedding People by Alison Espach, and 5 stars for me. Love, love, love this book. I listened to the audio as I'm driving. I was actually laughing out loud at parts of this book. Didn't realize the premise of this book has a touch of dark in it. It is considered fiction, and I feel it's almost promoted like it's a lighter book, and I would not say it is a lighter book. It's about a woman who, she went through a divorce. She's very depressed, and she goes to this fancy hotel because she basically wants to go there to commit suicide. And she runs into the bride of this wedding party that has taken over the hotel, and they end up becoming really great friends. I feel like it's all I really want to say because there's so much to be discovered with this book. I love this book so much. There was so much emotions and surprises, and it just, I felt like it was just a fun, but also tinges of dark along the way. And it's a very human story. I felt like it was a really nice surprise. I didn't expect to love it as much as I did. I did know people have been talking about this book for a while. The reason why I was persuaded to read it is I kept seeing it on like the most read. Goodreads has like, here are the books that have been the most read every week. And I always pay attention to see what people are reading. And it kept being on that list. And I thought, okay, I need to read that book. It sounds like it would be an interesting read. And it was. I really, really enjoyed it. Okay, I feel like I've been talking forever. I don't know if Amanda has the same amount outside of vlogs, but this is going to end up being a very long video, I feel. Thanks for listening to so many books that we have read for this quarter. Let us know if there's anything that you have read or anything that you would recommend to us after you heard both me and Amanda's long list of books that we have read. Thanks so much, guys, for listening, and until next time.